My name is Micah Pierce.
And my name is Marley Harmeling.
And on behalf of the Manitowoc, Fond du Lac, and Sheboygan County Right to Life and their respective Teens for Life chapters, we'd like to welcome you to our Tri-County Respect for Life event. We're very grateful to see all of you here today, and we're encouraged to see so many people here who understand the value of life, and we appreciate you spending your afternoon with us. This year marks the 40th year since the U.S. Supreme Court ruled on Roe v. Wade, and this marker serves as a grim reminder of our need to take back the culture and to defend life at all stages.
Right now, we're going to have some teens come out and they're going to pass out some petitions on clipboards. These petitions are in support of the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. This piece of legislation protects unborn children who are capable of feeling pain from being aborted. Substantial medical evidence demonstrates that unborn children are capable of experiencing pain at 20 weeks after fertilization. Alabama, Georgia, Idaho, Kansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and North Dakota have already enacted this law, and it is our hope to enact this law in Wisconsin. So if you would please sign your name on one of those petitions, we would love to show our legislators that we are supporting this and that we would like this to be a pro-life law in Wisconsin as well. All right.
And also the bathrooms.
Oh.
And also, if you would like to use the restroom at any time today, they're a little hard to find. You go out back the way you would have came in, and you turn right at the hallway, and it'll be on the right. First you'll see the women's room, and then you'll see the men's room. Now welcome Toby Tomac. We'd now like to welcome Toby Tomac, Youth Director at First Reformed Church in Oostburg, to deliver our invocation.
Let us call upon our great God together, and before we do, let us pause so that He may have a chance to focus our hearts on Him, and we would pay attention to what He is looking to do in each of our lives today. You are the giver of life, our Creator God. And Father, we give you thanks for the life you have given each of us by your grace. Jesus, the only begotten Son of God, we thank you for your sacrifice on the cross as the payment for the penalty of our sins. And out of your love for us and in the power of the resurrection, we can now be in relationship with you. And we gather together to glorify you, Lord. We know your Holy Spirit is here, and we feel you're moving in this place, your guidance and your counsel in each of our hearts. So move mightily today, God. Our desire in this gathering is to bring you glory, that you would be made known more as a result of us gathering here. Lord, that you would increase and we would decrease. We exalt thee, O God. Amen.
Alrighty. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. So each year, the Sheboygan County Right to Life presents the Friend of Life Award to an individual, or in this case, individuals, who have committed significant time and effort to those who cannot speak for themselves. At this time, we invite Jerry Doyle, Willie Herman, Dennis Schmeidler, Peter Tempest, Mary Yerk, and Earl Zastrow to please come forward to receive these plaques as a token of our appreciation for your prayerful, peaceful, and sustained witness in front of Planned Parenthood of Sheboygan. This group began when Dennis Schmeidler offered a cup of coffee to a lady representing life in front of Planned Parenthood on a chilly winter day. He joined her in praying and then later invited his Bible study group to join him. Their presence has been there every Thursday around noon for almost 3 years. Your continued vigilance and dedication to be a visible presence offers women one more opportunity to consider life for their baby. In Galatians 6:9, the Apostle Paul writes, "Let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart." They are an encouragement to all of us here today. So if you would please join me in showing appreciation for them at this time. Thank you so much. You can return to your seats. Thank you so much.
By the nature of the audience, I'm sure that you all understand the importance of having pro-life legislators in elected office. And for that reason, I'd like to recognize the representatives and senators who made it a point to be with us today and to take time out of their busy schedules to support life with us. So I would like to invite all the senators and representatives in the room to stand up so everybody can recognize you. All right. And I would like to recognize them by name, starting with Mike Ensley, who is a representative in the Sheboygan area. Also, Mike Castell, a representative in Sheboygan County. We have Mike Gudex, a senator from... Rick Gudex, apologies, Senator. We have Rick Gudex from Fond du Lac. We have Dan Lemieux, Representative Dan Lemieux, also from Southern Sheboygan County. And our next speaker will be Senator Joe Lipom. And Joe Lipom is a native of Sheboygan, a graduate of UW-Madison. He served in the Assembly from 1998 until 2002, at which point he was elected to the 9th Senate District of Wisconsin, of course. He currently serves on 9 committees, 2 of which he is the vice chair of, and he is also currently President pro tem of the Senate. If you'd all join me in welcoming Senator Joe Lipom.
I'm going to start by moving the microphone stand around to the side here so that you can hopefully hear us all. I want to make sure that you have the chance to hear all of our great presenters and even our MC today. So can people hear okay? Sounds good. Well, hey, it is great to be here as we, the citizens of Sheboygan, Manitowoc, and Fond du Lac County, come together to celebrate life. What an awesome opportunity for us to join together and to work and encourage each other, that we just continue to do what we can to help ourselves and our fellow citizens respect the great blessing that God has given to us, life. And that's what we're here to do today, is to celebrate life. I'm so pleased that my legislative colleagues are able to be here today, and really they should be up here on stage with me. Again, I want to recognize them again and ask them to stand. Mike Ensley from the 26th Assembly District, Steve Castell from the 27th Assembly District, Dan Lemieux from the 59th Assembly District, and an important new member of the Wisconsin State Senate, Senator Rick Gudex from the 18th Senate District. There's Rick, there you go. We are blessed in the legislature because you, the citizens of this state, have elected a pro-life majority in the state assembly, a pro-life majority in the state senate, and a pro-life governor of the state of Wisconsin. And I'm pleased to be here today to give you just a brief update on some things that we're doing at the state level to again celebrate and encourage life. But before we do that, I want to do 2 additional recognitions. First is my family. My wife Heather is here, along with our sons Andrew and William. Andrew is 6 and William is 4. And Lucy, our daughter, is 2. So you guys can give a wave. There you go. Sitting with my family is my mom, Sue Lipom, and my mother-in-law, Joan Hansen. And we thank both of those moms for being here today as well. Life is alive and well in the Lipom family. Now, some of you maybe from the Fond du Lac area don't know this in its entirety, but I come from a family of 13 children. So I have 10 brothers and 2 sisters. You can applaud that. My mom will take the applause. There you go. And along with my parents and our spouses now, and children, there are 62 members of the immediate Lipom family, 36 which are grandchildren. We've been blessed, my parents have been blessed with 36 grandchildren. Interestingly, 18, including our 3 children, 18 are under the age of 6. You laugh, right? Yeah. We were all mostly together on Easter, and I know we were all together on Christmas. And, it's getting to that point where you're finally kind of standing there in my parents' dining room or in the family room, and you're starting to wonder why there's so much chaos and noise going on. But again, I'd remind you of the fact that 18 of those 36 grandchildren are under the age of 6. So it's really an exciting experience, and again, a great blessing. 4 more Lipom grandchildren are on their way. Actually, our sister-in-law, Holly, I don't think I saw Holly here today, probably not, because she's expecting their 4th child within the next couple of days. Right now? Oh, my mom, tomorrow. There you go. I was close. I thought my mom was saying right now. And 3 more are coming within the next couple of months, including a second set of twins, which will be born sometime early this summer. So again, we're just all pleased to be working with you to doing our part of representing and supporting life, and we thank God for his wonderful blessings. The second shout out or recognition that I wanted to give was to this great institution that we're all sitting in today, Sheboygan Area Lutheran High School. Sheboygan and Wisconsin have been blessed by this high school and other great Christian schools, as have the Manitowoc and the Fond du Lac area. And let's just all give a round of applause for the great Christian education opportunities I, along with 11 of my brothers and one of my sisters, are alum of Sheboygan Area Lutheran High School. So we've had the blessing of attending this great institution. 3 of my nephews have recently graduated, and 4 of the Lipom grandchildren are current students here at Lutheran High. And you know, a couple of years from now, when Lucy graduates, we'll have a good long tradition of Lipom family members having the opportunity of receiving a great Christian education here at Lutheran High School. And they do a great job of educating and working to develop good Christian leaders, one student at a time. And that's really why I'm pleased to be before you today, is I work on a daily basis along with my colleagues in the legislature to be good Christian leaders. You know, we're elected to be public servants and to be representatives of the people. But I know amongst my colleagues that are here today and myself, we are also proud to be good Christian leaders in the Wisconsin State Legislature, and that's an important thing. And with that mantle, we work to continue to move forward a positive agenda to celebrate and encourage life here in the state of Wisconsin. You know, while most of what's been talked about in the legislature over the past 2 years has been focused importantly on the fiscal kind of responsibility that we're trying to restore to our state capital, we have and continue to move forward a real positive pro-life agenda down in the state capitol as well. I'm just going to mention a couple of the bills that are currently in play down at the Capitol and then encourage your support. One bill that myself and Representative Costell specifically are working on, and it will be out in the next couple of days, is a bill that will prevent and make it a civil penalty for anyone to have an abortion for a sex-selective kind of purpose. Unfortunately, that is growing across the nation, where families are realizing that they're having a son or a daughter and that's not the gender of child that they would prefer, and they are choosing to have abortions specifically on the sex-based gender of their child to be. And this legislation would prevent and disallow that from happening here in the state of Wisconsin. And again, it's an honor and pleasure to work with Representative Costello on that important bill. A second effort, and it's kind of a larger effort that we took on last year in the state budget and will continue to move forward in this state budget, is really working to protect your tax dollars from being used to promote or provide abortions. We made great strides in that under the last state budget, the first state budget introduced by Governor Walker, but there are some additional programs and funding areas that we need to focus on. And again, our commitment is that your dollars, your tax dollars, are not going to be used to support, encourage, promote, or provide abortion-related services here in the state of Wisconsin. That's known as the Taxpayer Protection Act, and again, it's focused on ensuring your dollars aren't being used for abortion-related services. Another bill that we're working on, and most of my colleagues are involved in all these legislative opportunities and pro-life efforts. Another bill would require that a woman prior to having an abortion experience her baby's heartbeat and view an ultrasound. And we think that that's an important and reasonable step for an individual to take before they choose to end the life of another individual. You know, my wife and I have had 3 children now, as I shared, and ultrasound technology is so unbelievable. I mean, it's awesome. And it's unbelievable how clear it is to understand that that child is just that, a child. Upon conception and within days, you can see that, and you know that it's a living human being. And again, we believe it's responsible and good to encourage women and men, couples, to understand that that is a life, that they are making a unbelievably important decision in regard to. And again, that's the Woman Right to Know Her Unborn Child Act, and we hope to move that forward. Another effort that I'm working on is to require that ultrasound technology, specifically for the development of children, be implemented into our human growth development curriculum in our high schools, so that as children are learning about the development of children and about the process of life, they have the opportunity to view an ultrasound. And again, it's just such an amazing technology that God has given us to help us to understand that that's a life. And we hope to move that forward during the legislative process as well. A good colleague of ours who's not here today, I don't think yet, Representative Andre Jacques and Senator Grothman, both of them represent parts of Sheboygan and Manitowoc counties. Senator Grothman and Representative Jacques, along with many of us here in the contingent that's with you today, are also supporting legislation that would change the definition in regard to wrongful death of an unborn child. And it would define that wrongful death statutes extend to individuals that are not yet born but are in the womb. And if those individuals are harmed or damaged while in the womb, they would be protected by statute and by law. Those are the major legislative initiatives that we're working on, and again, we encourage your support as each of those bills will begin to move through the legislative process over the next couple of days and weeks. There are also 2 important constitutional amendments that we're working on, and these are amendments that will require your ratification. A constitutional amendment in the state of Wisconsin requires that the legislature pass them in 2 consecutive sessions, and then the people of the state ratify those amendments via a vote in a referendum vote in the preceding years. And the 2 constitutional amendments that we're working on aren't specifically related to life or abortion, but they are related and connected to our interests here today. The first, and I'm actually the Senate author of both of these constitutional amendments. The first will be a religious freedom amendment, and it will clarify specifically in our Constitution that it is unlawful from our state and its subsidiaries from burdening religious expression unless the government proves that it has a compelling interest to do so. This is important Government, specifically at the federal level and many state level governments, are infringing on our religious freedoms here in the United States of America, whether it be the Affordable Care Act and some of its provisions or other things that are playing out again in Washington. Our religious freedoms are being attacked. Our Wisconsin Constitution needs some kind of beefing up, and this Religious Freedom Amendment will again ensure that our religious freedoms cannot be infringed upon by our government. And then the second amendment that you'll have the opportunity to consider is a Healthcare Freedom Amendment. And this amendment would again disallow a government, whether it be our state government or the federal government, from telling, requiring, or mandating that we have insurance, health insurance, or that we purchase certain types of insurance. And if we don't do that, we would face a government penalty. Again, this amendment would protect our healthcare freedom rights here in the state of Wisconsin. And again, I'm hopeful you'll demonstrate through your applause that are two good issues that, again, we should be working on down at the Capitol. Thank you. Wisconsin Right to Life does a great job of keeping you informed about what we're working down at the Capitol on their website and through communications. And I would just encourage you to, don't hesitate to lend a word of encouragement and prayer to myself and my fellow senators and representatives. We are working to try to move forward a good pro-life agenda down at the state capitol. But the opponents to these measures are fierce and they are vicious. And you need to know that and understand that. I mean, it's sad how the devil works amongst us. And, right now I'm getting emailed just about every day from a lady here in Sheboygan. Her name's Diane. And she just day after day after day is viciously attacking me with some unbelievably vulgar language because of my pro-life stance. And sadly, she takes a lot out of it on my mom and brings that into her emails and her, trying to tear me down. And it's encouraging in a way because it just forces you to be stronger in your beliefs and in your passion. But you guys can help us as we go, because don't underestimate how forceful, and again, I'll use the word vicious, that the opponents to our life-striving measures are. So we appreciate your encouragement, but we appreciate your grassroots effort as well, because there's only so much that we can do in government. And really, we should want a limited government. We, the people of this state, through our actions as individuals, as families, as church-going people, as neighbors, as co-workers, we should be reaching out and helping our fellow citizens and helping them to understand and appreciate the value of life. And we do that oftentimes by just lending a hand and helping people through struggling times. It's sad how many people abort individuals because they don't know if they'll be able to handle the struggle. Well, we're all there to help them in that struggle. And it's not a struggle. It's a wonderful blessing. It's the blessing of life. And again, we all, in our individual ways, need to do even more to help reach out to our fellow citizens and help them to embrace and celebrate life. So thanks for being here today. Thanks for your support for our legislative initiatives, and thanks for your efforts to celebrate life. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Senator Libam. At this point, I would like to invite Fond du Lac Teens for Life President Sarah Smet to come to the stage to tell us what the Fond du Lac teens in their area have been doing to promote life.
Hi, as she said, I'm Sarah, and I'm the president of Fond du Teens for Life. My group has only been around for about 6 years, and my sister Mariah actually started in 2007.
Really lean into the microphone. We want everybody to hear what you're saying.
Okay, is that better?
I'm not shy to do this because I want her to be heard, so there you go.
Are we good?
Yeah, that's better. There you go.
Okay.
There you go. Yeah.
All right, I'm Sarah, and I am currently president of the Fond du Lac Teens for Life. My group has been around for about 6 years, and my sister Mariah actually founded it in 2007. We currently have about 20 members, and they range from the ages of 10 all the way to 20. We're here today helping to host this event because we're all very passionate about life. We want to do whatever we can to stop abortion. We're thankful for the pregnancy centers like New Beginnings and The Crossing that love and help support women and help them know that they have a choice other than Planned Parenthood where they can go when they're pregnant. The more centers that are open, the more likely that they won't choose to go to a Planned Parenthood. And with God's grace, hopefully the Sheboygan chapter will be able to open one here soon. Today we're here because we stand up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Slowly, the number of abortions in Wisconsin have been declining, and by standing up for life, we're all making a difference. If you're here today because you feel the same, thank you. If you're here because someone asked you to, I hope that hearing the speakers and just seeing all the stuff will renew your sanctity for life and help you to get inspired to be involved. Thank you.
Well, my fellow MC Micah Pierce and I are here to represent the Sheboygan County Teens for Life chapter. And like the Fond du Lac teens, we strive to promote life in our area. And recently we did a fundraiser for a crisis pregnancy center here in the Sheboygan area. We accomplished this by speaking at different churches in the Sheboygan area and passing out baby bottles and asking people to fill them with cash, change, checks, and bring them back for collection. The following is a video that we used to promote the Baby Bottle fundraiser, and it also explains a little bit about our group and our ministry.
We had 8 local churches participate in our baby bottle fundraiser, and together, all the members raised a grand total of, Marley, if I could have my notes. Nobody saw that, right? Okay. Anyways, together, they raised a grand total of $8,639.64. That's fantastic. That's really going to go a long ways. But we'd like to recognize the church whose members donated the most. And that would be Gibbsville Reformed, whose members donated a grand total of $3,582. So thank you so much, Gibbsville Reformed.
Before we go on to our next speaker, our main speaker, it is important to note that before our event closes, we have a free will offering. And when you write out your checks for your free will offering, make sure you write out the checks to Right to Life, not any designated county, so it's just Right to Life. And we also have special music by the Gulke Sisters after this. And now we have our main speaker, Melissa Oden. Melissa Oden survived a failed saline abortion, but she didn't only survive, she thrived. With a master's degree in social work, she has worked in the fields of substance abuse, mental health, domestic violence, sexual assault counseling, and child welfare. She now works with organizations in Canada, the US, and Australia. She's been featured on the 700 Club, Fox News, Focus on the Family, American Family Radio, and other stations. Her story depicts the beauty of God's grace in our lives, finding joy and healing in the midst of grief and loss, and the transformational power of forgiveness. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our main speaker for the day, Melissa Oden.
Good afternoon. I'm one who likes to have the mic in my hand, so this is a difficult thing for me. We'll see if I can get this adjusted. I come to you from Iowa. However, I spend so much time in Wisconsin that I think sometimes people actually mistaken me as a Wisconsin. But if you'd hear me pronounce the names of your cities here in Wisconsin, you would know within a second that I'm not from around here. I was born and raised in Iowa, and my family recently moved to Kansas City. And of course, I've been joking. Anybody from the Midwest realizes that I didn't move to Kansas City for the great weather. Literally, after we moved to Kansas City, we received 3 different snowfalls of over 10 inches every time. So I am grateful to be here in Wisconsin with all of you today, plainly because it's a gift to be with so many people who understand the sanctity of life and are so highly involved. But I was also really happy to step off the plane and not see snow. So thank you for that. Before I proceed today, there's a group of people that I don't think we have given enough accolades to today, and that is the group, all of the teens with Teens for Life. I have never seen a group of teens do such a great job putting this together and doing all the things they did leading up to it. So can we please give all of them a round of applause? I am so blessed to have colleagues around literally not only our nation but around our world who do amazing things to make sure that lives are protected and respected. But I will tell you all that Wisconsin means a lot to me because I know how much this state does for its citizens, born and preborn. And I am so thankful to not only call the people in Wisconsin with Wisconsin Right to Life, Teens for Life, churches, organizations, not only are they my colleagues, but they're my friends. And so I thank each and every one of you in this room for all that you do and your presence here today. Because 35 years ago, I truly believe my life and my biological mother's life and truly my entire family's lives could have been so very different if only there would have been someone like you available to them. If only there would have been a pregnancy center just like the one you're trying to get started here in Sheboygan, just like the two that exist in your other areas. If only there would have been a pregnancy center or someone my parents could have turned to when they were faced with an unplanned pregnancy as college students, maybe my life would have been different. But many people who know me know that I have found great purpose in what has happened in my life. But 35 years ago, what happened in my family was painful indeed. Because 35 years ago, my biological mother entered a hospital in Sioux City, Iowa, with the intent to end my life by an abortion. What I know now about my biological mother is that she fits most statistics when it comes to abortion. As I shared, my birth mother was a college student at the time. She wasn't married to my father, even though they had been dating for many years and were actually engaged. And what I know about my biological mother, like most women in our world today, is that she didn't have any other choice than abortion. And I think it's so important that we take what we know and educate people in our world about it, because so many people hear the words choice and right and think that it is just a choice and it is a right. And what they don't hear are the experiences of women who have had abortions and can say that was the only door that was open to me. They don't read the statistics that tell us that internationally, well over 60% of women report being coerced into having an abortion. So it isn't their choice, it's someone else's choice. And what I know in my birth mother's life, that was the only choice that was made available to her. She wasn't allowed to stay with family members who offered to let her stay with them. She wasn't given the opportunity to choose life and parent me with my father. What I know is that the only door available to her in August of 1977 was the door to the hospital to end my life by a saline infusion abortion. And what I know now is that it was my own grandmother, my mother's mother, who made sure that that was the only door available to her. And please know I don't fault her for that, nor do I my mother nor my father, because I meet a lot of people like my family in the world today who don't understand the long-term consequences of abortion, that somehow think that it is the right option at the time. But that was the only option made available 35 years ago. And in August of 1977, my biological mother entered that hospital, and the saline infusion for the abortion was started. Many of you who have been involved in pro-life work for a while know the saline infusion abortion. I meet lots of professionals who came across children like me in their lives. For those of you who don't know about the saline infusion abortion, it involved injecting a toxic salt solution into the amniotic fluid surrounding me in the womb. The intent of that toxic salt solution was to scald me to death from the outside in. If you look it up online or you read about it in medical journals, you will read about how children like me are actually called the red-skinned or the candy-appled babies because it turns the skin bright red as it peels it away and moves internally into the organs. My biological mother's abortion should have taken place over about 72 hours at the most. But for some reason, I soaked in that toxic salt solution for even 2 days longer than what I was supposed to. On the 5th day of the procedure, my biological mother went back to the hospital and had her premature labor induced with me. And that day, sadly, she was meant to give birth to a dead child through that abortion. I can't imagine what it was like for me to fight for my life over those 5 days. But I also can't imagine what it was like for my biological mother over those 5 days. To not be given any other choice and then have to go through what she did, knowing what the outcome was going to be. All of those things were routine, but what happened next certainly was not. Because after I was delivered there at the hospital, even though they initially believed that the abortion had succeeded in ending my life and they left me for dead in the hospital to be disposed of later. Have you ever wondered what happens to children after they're aborted? If you think about it, you know. Tens of millions of children before me and tens of millions of children after me have been disposed of like the trash. But God had other plans that day in 1977. Because by his amazing grace, as I was left in that hospital to be disposed of later, there was a nurse who heard the weak grunting noises emanating from the body of that little girl they had left as a successful abortion. And that's when they realized that it had not succeeded in ending my life. And I was alive. Amen. Praise God. And praise those medical workers. Because back then, there were no laws on the books that said they needed to provide me with medical care. And maybe some of you have seen what's been happening in the news recently out of Florida, where they wanted to pass a state law, much like the federal version that President Bush enacted years back, that spelled out how children like me will be provided medical care when we survive. If you look it up on the internet, you can read about how the abortion industry feels about children like me being provided medical care. It's fascinating indeed. But 35 years ago, I was blessed with medical professionals who said, yes, we will care for this girl when we realize that she's alive. And I know that that's the dramatic difference between 55 million other children who lost their lives in the last 40 years and me. People said yes that day. We will care for this girl. And I know that there are people in this room who do the exact same thing every single day. Through your work with Right to Life organizations, by witnessing outside of the abortion clinic, by praying, by being there at the pregnancy center, by offering post-abortive healing, everyone in this room is doing what was done for me that day and saying, yes, Lord, we will breathe life into this world that is such a culture of death. And I know you would never know by looking at me today that I survived what I did. I know that you can look at me today and never think in a million years that I survived what I did. You would never guess that when I first survived, the doctors didn't believe I would continue to live for very long. My birth mother had that abortion thinking she was less than 5 months pregnant with me. But the fact that I was able to live, and I weighed a little less than 3 pounds at the time, I was 2 pounds, 14 ounces when I survived. It pointed to the fact she was much further along in her pregnancy than what she had imagined. And we've already heard the senator talk about the power of ultrasound. Just think what having another pregnancy center here in your area could do for people like my mother and children like me, so that they can see their children in the womb, and so they can know how far along they are in their pregnancy. Of course, my mother wouldn't have had any other chance to change that course, but then she would have known the truth about the life inside of her. You would never know by looking at me today that when I first survived, I was fighting for my life due to the complications I was suffering. I suffered from seizures for an extended period of time. I had severe respiratory and liver problems. I was too weak to suck from a bottle, and so my head was shaved from temple to temple, and I was fed through IV lines in my head for months. And I know we live in a world that often wants to talk about the fact that only certain lives are worth living and certain lives are worth loving. But I will tell you that my adoptive parents didn't hesitate for a second to open their hearts and their home to me when they received the call from the social workers about that little girl who had survived a failed abortion and was fighting for her life. The first time my parents met me, I was still in the neonatal intensive care unit. And my parents, if you ever have the opportunity to hear interviews that they do, because we have the tendency to show up in the news quite frequently, you'll hear my parents tell the story of how the first time they laid eyes on me, lying there in the incubator, full of tubes and wires, they fell in love with me. And I wasn't that pretty of a baby, folks. It's okay. The pictures are all over the internet. You can see them. I was this little tiny, scrawny girl fighting for my life, and they saw God's inherent beauty in me. And my mom always tells the story of how the first time she held me in the palm of her hand, she knew that I was going to be okay. They believed in me. They loved me, and I truly believe that that was key in my ability to survive and thrive. That is something each and every one of us can do every single day, is simply love the people around us unconditionally, not judge them, but offer them love. Let them know that you are there for them, and let them know where they can go in the community for resources and supports if they are facing an unplanned pregnancy. And I know it wasn't just my parents' love that healed me. It was the love of the medical professionals who cared for me. I've been blessed in my life to know a handful of them personally. I know how they knitted me clothing that I still have in my possession today. I know how they gave me a name when I was left nameless for months. How they fed me from a bottle when the doctors told them not to. They believed in me, and they loved me. And I know they played a heavy part in me being here today too. And as I shared, I come from Iowa. I grew up in Iowa thinking I had a pretty normal life as a kid. I grew up in a home where adoption was our norm. You know, I fight for that in this world today. As much as I fight for the right for every child to live, I also fight for adoption to be an option that is talked about. I know it's not the solution in our world, but it is an option that obviously should be considered. And I grew up in a home knowing what a gift adoption was to my sister and I. My older sister is adopted from another family. And then our parents adopted me no matter what they were told about how much care I was going to require or the fact that I wouldn't continue to live. And our parents did such a great job letting us know that adoption was a gift and adoption was love. We weren't only loved by our adoptive parents, but we were loved by our biological parents. My sister and I knew how much our parents must have loved us, our birth parents, to give us that gift in our life. And adoption was so normal that after 15 years of infertility, when my adoptive parents had a son of their own, we couldn't understand why he came along. Truly. That's another great opportunity. If you ever hear the interviews my parents share, you can hear how I fell off the couch at the age of 7 when they told us that they were expecting him, because we couldn't understand why they would do that. My sister and I, our first response was, "Great, you're adopting another baby." And when they said my mother was pregnant, that's when I fell off the couch. We didn't know that those kind of things might happen in our family. But we knew what a gift adoption was. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that the truth about who I really am and what happened in my life came to light. And that's another one of those reasons. And I'm a mother, and so I'm going to get choked up when I say this. It's another reason why you young people mean so much to me. Because I didn't have the opportunity to do what you do when I was your age. And I truly believe if I would have been given the opportunity to speak up and speak out, if I would have had an outlet back then, I can only imagine how powerful that would have been for me, as it also would have been for the world. And so I want to say thank you again to all of you teens in this room. Because when I was 14, all I could focus on was what happened in my life. And my adoptive parents never intended for me to find out the truth about what had happened. Because, of course, who wants their child to know something that is so terribly painful? But God always has the way of bringing the truth to light, doesn't he? And in ways that we never could have seen coming ourselves. And what ended up happening when I was 14 is my older sister had an unplanned pregnancy. She was a high school student. And I'm sure there are families in this room who can understand what that was like for my family. We didn't think that was ever going to happen at our house. I call those the when the rubber hits the road moments. You know, we're raised in homes where we know about the sanctity of life, the gift of adoption. We know how God creates all of us in his image. But it isn't until we are called to put those beliefs into play where the rubber hits the road. And of course, as a young person, my sister had fears and anxieties. She was fearful of what people would say about her, what her life would continue to look like. And unfortunately, an abortion crossed her mind. What I am most thankful for is that my sister knew that no matter what she was fearful about, she had someone she could turn to, our parents, that they would love her, they would support her, they would speak truth into her life, but they would love her unconditionally. And it was a little over 21 years ago that my parents heard about her pregnancy through her. And it was a little over 21 years ago that our parents felt called to share the truth about my life to her in the hopes that it would make a difference in their grandchild's life and also their daughter's. And it was a little over 21 years ago that my sister led me on to the fact that there was more to the story of my life. A little over 21 years ago, my mother had to tell me the truth about what had happened to me. And people ask me now, didn't you ever see this one coming? No. I can honestly tell you, I never saw this one coming. I grew up knowing I was adopted, knowing I was born premature. But maybe like people around the world, you're wondering, didn't you grow up with a health problem? Or realizing maybe there was something different about you? I received a clean bill of health by the time I was 5 years old. Praise God for that. And I am here to report to you that out of those survivors that I know, many of them survived saline infusion abortions like me. And very rarely will you find one of us with burned skin. The majority of us are perfectly healthy. And those that have health issues have minor complications, by and large. Thanks be to a mighty God. And I know that he does that intentionally, because what it does is show the world that this is what 55 million other children would have looked like in some way, shape, or form, if only they had been given the opportunity to live. But it was a little over 21 years ago. Thank you. And it was a little over 21 years ago that my first nephew was born. My sister chose life for her son based on the information that she was given about my survival. And thanks to her choice, she now has her first granddaughter. My nephew and his wife just welcomed their first daughter into the world about a month ago. That is the power of one life. You never know each day what a difference you are going to make in this world. And so 21 years ago, I found out the truth about my life. And the short version of that is that it was incredibly painful. That I lived a life full of pain for many years. Even though I had the great support of my family and my church and even my public school, I lived a life full of pain. And nobody but Jesus brought me back from that. And nobody but Jesus healed my brokenness. And when I was 19, I started on the path to find my biological family. How many of you in this room have seen the film October Baby? Raise your hand. Hey, that's a pretty good number. I shouldn't be surprised here in Wisconsin, should I? If you haven't seen October Baby, I would encourage you to. It's a powerful, powerful film that shares the story of a fictional abortion survivor. But if you watch the movie and you hear my story or the story of some of my friends who are survivors, you will kind of start to think, wow, that sounds like her. It's true. The producers didn't know about the majority of us when they wrote that film, but they were blessed to find out about us afterwards. And I believe God really put that story on their hearts to share with the world. But much like the character of October Baby, I went looking for my family when I was 19. I also started trying to obtain my medical records at that time. Because even though I never thought this is what I would do with my life, I knew that this is what I was saved for. And maybe some of you can relate to what that's like in your own life. You know, you can't understand what it's like to be an abortion survivor, but maybe you know God is nudging you to do something, to get involved, to speak publicly, to go witness outside of the clinic, to volunteer at a pregnancy center, and you're thinking, oh, no, I could never do that. God never calls on us to be able. He calls on us to be available. And when you make yourself available to him, you will find you have all the gifts and talents you need in this world to serve him. But I spent years of my life thinking, I'm not a public speaker. And what is the world going to think or say about someone like me? And even though I was fearful, I knew the day would come. So I knew the medical records were an important piece of that, because one of the most common arguments on the pro-abortion side about me is that I look too normal. Truly. Look at her. She looks perfectly normal, is what I typically hear. That is true. I know. I wake up in this skin every single day. And every single day I say, wow, God is good. But God would be that good whether I was standing in front of you today perfectly healthy or if I was suffering from one of the numerous disabilities the doctors thought I would have throughout my life. God is simply that good, period, no matter how it's wrapped. So I knew those medical records were going to be an important key in me coming forward publicly. What people don't sometimes understand is why I wanted to find my biological parents. For me, the answer is very simple. No matter what, they gave me the gift of life, and I am forever grateful to them. And knowing what I know now, that they were given no other option in the world other than abortion, they needed to know that I love them and that I forgave them. And I forgave my family so long ago that I can't even tell you the first time I forgave them. But I say first time because forgiveness is a process in my life. I forgive them over and over again every day of my life. And I will tell you that I wouldn't be able to do this today if I hadn't forgiven them. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't forgiven them. And I know that likely there are people in this room today who struggle with forgiveness. And I hope that you can find inspiration from what I've been able to do, because you deserve to offer forgiveness to other people, to change them and to change you. And so I wanted to find my family before I came forward publicly. And it took me 10 years to find them. It took me 10 years to obtain my medical records. And I will tell you, those were some of the longest 10 years of my life, because I wanted so badly to come forward knowing that that is what God intended for me to do. Even though I felt unprepared for it, I wanted to do it for him. But I wanted to find my family and obtain those medical records first. And in those 10 years, of course, lots of great things happened in my life. I married my husband, who I couldn't do this without. My husband and I went to high school together. Lots of people wonder about him. My husband has known the truth about me for a very long time and has stood by my side and fights in this fight with me. In those 10 years, I obtained my master's degree in social work, and I am grateful for the opportunities that I was given to serve people in so many capacities, because it fits with what I still do today. But in those 10 years, I desperately wanted to find my family and obtain my medical records. And finally, after those 10 years had unfolded, in God's perfect timing, I obtained my medical records. I had tried everything humanly possible in those 10 years to make it happen. And lo and behold, trying one last time in 2007, I received them. And you can see copies of my medical records on my website. My website's included on the bulletin today. It's just melissaoden.com. On the photos page of my website, you can see copies of my medical records. And in them, they say things like, a saline infusion for an abortion was done, but was unsuccessful. My life had to result from something being unsuccessful. That is not God's plan for any of our lives. And I know that's also why you do what you do every single day, to let people know that their life is a success, no matter what. Because we live in a world that wants to only say that certain lives are successful, and usually for all the wrong reasons. And we need people to know that their life and their children's lives are a success, no matter the circumstance or the situation they're in at the time. But through those medical records, I was able to find my biological family, because when I received my medical records, they actually performed a pretty big mistake. We talk about HIPAA violations in today's world, right? We all sign that paperwork about protected health information. Well, they forgot to protect a little bit of information when they sent it to me. They forgot to black out my birth parents' names. I can say that publicly because I think God has a pretty funny sense of humor sometimes. I tried for 10 years in every right, respectable way to obtain those medical records and find my family. I even worked for the adoption agency within those 10 years who handled my adoption. And I literally would spend days sitting at my desk thinking, I could walk across that hallway and there's got to be something, right? I could just go take a peek. And I never did, because I knew that wasn't what I was supposed to do. And because I was obedient, I truly believe the Lord blessed me in the funniest of ways to send me those medical records with their names included in it. And not only was I able to find out who my family was very quickly, but I determined that I was living in the very same city as my own biological father. I didn't grow up in Sioux City, Iowa. I grew up a couple hours away from there. I moved to Sioux City to finish my master's degree, knowing that that's where my birth mother's abortion had taken place years before. But who would have thought, 30-some years later, family would be there? But there he was, my own biological father. And after years of looking for him, suddenly I had no idea what to do about it. And so I did what I needed to do. I prayed. And I prayed, and I prayed, and I prayed. And after a couple of months, I knew what I was called to do. I was called to reach out to him. And I did. The summer of 2007, I sent him a letter to his office, thinking that maybe somehow that would protect him, never knowing if he had told anybody in his life about the abortion or about me. So I sent him a letter telling him all of the things I've told all of you today. And as I was finishing that letter to him, I said, I'll be waiting to hear from you if you ever want to communicate with me. And it's been almost 6 years. 6 years with no response. And I had spent 10 years preparing for that. You know, certainly knowing how I came into this world, I knew the likelihood was very strong that my birth family may not want to hear from me. But there turns out to be great reason later why I never heard from my biological father. And I'll get to that point in a second. Even though I never heard back from my birth father, I turned my sights on my biological mother and her family. You know, after hearing what people do about my biological mother's abortion and certainly the child who lived, lots of people have questions about her. I will tell you sadly that I've never met my biological mother herself. I've never had any contact with her personally, because after the abortion took place, my birth parents' relationship ended, like so many do. And so I've never found her personally because I know her maiden name and not her married name. But I knew through my research who her parents were. My maternal grandparents, those same people that I know now, played such a heavy part in the abortion taking place. And I sent them a letter in 2007, asking them to let my birth mother know that I was alive and well and not angry or bitter, that I loved her and had forgiven her. And since I had never heard back from my birth father, I never expected to hear back from them. But 3 days after I sent that letter, I received one in return. It was my grandfather, and in that letter he admitted to the abortion taking place, which was courageous indeed. And I can't imagine how hard it was for them to receive the letter from me and then have to respond to it. But I hope that they know that they are as loved and forgiven as both of my biological parents are themselves. But through that letter, I learned a couple of important truths about my biological mother. First of all, that as of 5 years ago, she had never told anyone about her abortion or the child who had lived. I can't fault her for that. I think we live in a pretty mixed up world that wants to talk about abortion being a choice and a right, but at the same time tries to silence anyone's voice who wants to talk about the pain that they've experienced. That's pretty mixed up indeed. But I pray for my biological mother every night, as does our daughter, that somehow she has found someone that she can talk to about it in the last 5 years, that maybe she's found Silent No More, maybe she's gone to a Rachel's Vineyard retreat. I pray for her as much as I do every other woman who's been impacted by an abortion. And sadly, back in 2007, that was the last time I heard from them. Because in their letter, they also let me know that that message I was asking for them to pass along wasn't going to be passed. Because in recent years, they had become estranged from my mother. They were no longer speaking. And certainly there are a couple of reasons why that may be. But I truly believe that I know the greatest reason that exists, because I feel it and I see it in the families that I work with around the world. It's that abortion 35 years ago. If my biological mother was never given any other choice than to end the life of her child, and her own family put her in that position, yes, it makes great sense that their relationship has been changed. And I was just speaking to someone earlier today. You know, that is part of my crusade in this world, is not only to put a face to abortion, but to let people know that healing is the key in our world. The political piece is incredibly important. We need legislation. We also need grassroots efforts, and we also need healing. Healing at the family level up to the societal level in order to make a change in our world. And so that's the last time I heard from my biological mother's side of the family, was back in 2007. And that is also when I came forward publicly as a survivor for the first time. You know, even though I felt unprepared for years, I finally came into the light. And the first time I shared my story publicly was on Capitol Hill out in Washington, D.C. Not a bad first speaking engagement straight out of the gate, right? For the girl who thought Jesus must have got it wrong picking me for this job. But the first time I was out there, I thought, oh, I don't think I can ever do this again. I'm so sick to my stomach. I'm not cut out for this. I thought I had a bad case of nerves that first time I spoke publicly, but do you have that picture that you can put up, Roman? I want to share with you what I thought was a bad case of nerves was actually something totally different. It was a really bad case of morning sickness. I'll step aside so you can see that. That's our daughter, Olivia, who will be 5 the end of this month. That picture is a couple of years old. It's one of my favorites. I'll explain who the man is in a couple of minutes. But the first time I shared my story publicly, I was just a few days pregnant with Olivia. And I know that that is not a coincidence. I know that that was a sure sign from God saying, Melissa, you are doing exactly what I saved your life for. And now you and Ryan will find yourselves abundantly blessed. And we are. Sometimes I can't believe that the Lord has entrusted this child to us. Maybe some of you can relate as parents to what that's like. She is an amazing child by the grace of God. All she wanted for her 4th birthday last year was a full set of fetal models. If you don't know what fetal models are, you can see some over on the table. She has lots of babies. We call them squishy babies at our house. She has lots of little babies, but all she wanted was the full set because she loves babies. And of course, they're very expensive. And so we couldn't afford to buy her a set of fetal models. But someone with our local 40 Days for Life campaign blessed our family with a set of fetal models. And so when we go to Right to Life meetings, wherever we go, Olivia brings her babies in a basket. That's just one of the small things she does as a pro-life girl. But it was during my pregnancy with her that I got more involved in pro-life work, and I ultimately left my job in social work. What I didn't know at that time is that as I was advocating for people to choose life, my birth father was back home in Iowa fighting for his life. That's why my birth father never responded to the letter that I sent him, because so many days passed, and then he ultimately lost his life at the age of 51. He died right around to the very day of the Roe versus Wade anniversary decision in 2008. Again, that is not a coincidence in my book. And I didn't know for a couple of months that he had passed. I ended up Googling his name very innocently on the internet one night after that, and I stumbled across his obituary. And maybe some of you know what that's like to question God and his plans, right? I always say it's easy to believe in God's will when things go the way that we plan. And it's a whole other thing to trust in God's will when it goes against every plan that we had. And I knew, and I heard God speaking to me at the time. You know, I was wailing at him saying, after 10 years of looking, I found him and now I've lost him. And God said, be patient, Melissa. I know this is not your plan, but my plan is much greater than what you had in mind. And so I was patient, and as the months unfolded, I finally learned what God knew and I didn't. God knew that there was probably no other way for the truth about my life to come to my biological father's family, because my biological father, much like my biological mother, had never told anyone about the abortion or the child who lived. And looking back now on my father's life, they can see what it did to him. Abortion doesn't just change women's lives, it changes men's lives too. And they can now know what he meant 35 years ago when he told his brothers he had done something he was so ashamed of that he would never tell a living soul about it. And sadly, he made good on that promise because he carried the secret of the abortion and the fact that he was never able to stop it. He was never able to stand up and speak out. He was never able to talk about it later. He carried it to his grave. And even though I grieve the loss of my father, his legacy is much greater than that. Because now I can turn to all of you men in this room and say thank you on behalf of my birth father for being here. Thank you on behalf of him for doing something that he was never able to do in his life. That is my father's legacy. And through his passing, he ultimately gave me the gift of his family. If you've been wondering who the man is on the screen, that is my paternal grandfather, my biological father's father. Not long after Olivia was born, and Olivia just happened to be born at St. Luke's Hospital in Sioux City, Iowa, because God redeems all things. Trust me, that's a great story that I don't have time to share today, but I'll be willing to share it later if anybody wants to hear it. But not long after she was born there at St. Luke's, my biological father's family found me. And I've been blessed over the last 5 years now to have a relationship with my grandfather and even my great aunt. She's my grandmother's youngest sister on my birth father's side of the family. But I'm sad to say that I may never have the opportunity in my life to meet the majority of my biological family. I lived in Sioux City for the last 5 years with my own half-sister, who's a teenager, who I may never meet. I lived in the same city as my grandmother, who's still married to my grandfather, but I was never able to meet her. I never met my aunts and uncles or my cousins because they are still reeling from the pain of what they've discovered happened in our lives. There's so much guilt and so much shame. And not shame that I lived, shame that I was supposed to die and they couldn't do anything to prevent it or save me. And as hard as that is for me to admit that to the world, I believe that this is what God intended for the world to see. That it wasn't just my life and my biological mother's lives that were forever changed 35 years ago. Literally, my entire family has been forever changed by abortion. And I know we're not alone in that. And my hope comes in knowing that my family is going to be healed in God's time and not mine. And if it's his plan, I will meet them someday. And I know that that is the work that all of us are doing. You know, this is my call in my life, to stand up and speak out and be a witness. And now I minister to other abortion survivors every day. I know of about 100 other survivors personally. But statistics, one that came out today, if you read Life News, lifenews.com, in 1 year there is a report that there were over 1,270 children that survived failed abortions here in the United States. There are many more survivors than what anyone can imagine. But this is my calling, and I'm grateful for this gift that the Lord has given me. But I know each and every one of you in this room are given a call when it comes to standing up and speaking out for life. And I want to thank you for answering whatever that call is. And maybe you don't know what it is yet, but I just pray for you that when the time comes that you step forward boldly and with faith to know that you will make a difference. And today is a great opportunity for you to answer that call. We're going to share a little bit of music here in a second, and as the music is shared, there's going to be a free will offering. Through your free will offering today, you can answer the call that the Lord has for you today. Maybe he has stirred you in a way that maybe you didn't even intend when you came here today. But maybe after all you've seen that the teens are doing, all that you've heard in my story, all that you are feeling inside of you, maybe it will spur you to even give more than what you thought you could today. Or maybe it will spur you to get involved. Visit the tables later and find out how you can get involved. Now we're going to move to the music and your opportunity to answer the call through your free will offering. Your gifts today will help benefit the community by going to the 2 existing pregnancy centers and also helping to add to that existing $8,000 to raise even more to start a pregnancy center here in Sheboygan. So thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for all that you do in defense of lives like mine.
share.